I'm excited about today's. Coming up, we get the story behind one of the greatest bands of the rock era and their music from their rough and ready bassist, including the story behind a classic album they recorded in just a couple of days. And then many have speculated about the otherworldly sound that the greatest guitarist ever used on one of the band's most famous songs. Well, today we get the answer to that question. Plus the F-bomb that their charismatic singer accidentally left in their song that for 45 years radio has played without realizing it's there. And then there was a classic song that their frontman forgot the words to in the middle of the recording session and just made up a bunch of gibberish, and it sounded cool, so they left it in. Some of the greatest stories behind this legendary band come next. The legendary guest on Professor Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever got your fingers stuck in one of those Chinese finger traps, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now to be a part of our daily celebration of the rock era. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Oh man, it's time for another episode, another edition from our series, Revelations, where featured artists reveal rare stories about their greatest songs and their greatest albums, information you won't get anywhere else. Today we have part 2 with one of the greats, a founding member of my favorite rock band of all time, Van Halen, bassist and backing vocalist Michael Anthony. This time we cover the albums Van Halen II, Fair Warning, and Women and Children First, including some of Van Halen's greatest classics, like Dance the Night Away, and Everybody Wants Them, and The Cradle Will Rock, also Unchained. This has some of the most hilarious stories about David Lee Roth's antics, Michael tells him, including dropping an F-bomb in a song that the band actually forgot to edit out, and radios played it for decades without knowing. Then there was a song that Diamond Dave forgot the lyrics to, and he started scatting some gibberish. It made the song a classic, as well as the song Unchained, where a stuffy record executive came into the studio and DLR was recording his vocal, and he started making fun of the executive improv right then and there in the middle of the song, and it became part of the album.
Hey man, that suit is you. Woo!
Plus the album cover that scared the hell out of everyone and where it came from. Michael Anthony, he has some legendary stories, and it's coming up next on Professor Rock. Let's get into it. Well, Van Halen II, a great sophomore album. Dance the Night Away, as I understand it, the band was a little bit reticent because it didn't really represent exactly your sound, because it's the lightest and most radio-friendly song.
Ted Templeman, one thing that Ted Templeman was good at doing was knowing if a song was a hit. And, you know, and having done people like, you know, Linda Ronstadt, the Doobies, and the Doobies were like, you know, they weren't hard rock, but I mean, they were like the biggest thing. I mean, every song on every album was a freaking hit. And that was a big deal in part Ted Templeman. We really learned a lot in the studio working with Ted because he, you know, because we knew a lot of the songs that we had were rough. You know, they were rock songs, whatever. And Ted would help us. He would put that edge on it, that thing that would make it, you know, hey, kind of radio friendly. And he would come to us, I don't know how many times, he'd come to us and go, hey guys, this song could be a freaking hit again. I know it could be a hit again if you guys want to do it. And, but Jamie's Crying, that was kind of like in that tune of a thing where it was kind of more like a melodic type song, you know, with the way the harmonies and everything was, rather than just straight ahead or a hard rock. And another perfect example would be later on, Dancing in the Street. Or You're No Good. That's a perfect example. Ted came to us and said, hey, that was a big hit. Linda Ronstadt made that big hit. He goes, you guys can make that song a hit again. Ted would say, hey, Ed, what if you just did this? And would put a little bit more of a rock edge on it. Dave, he'd be screaming, throw the background harmonies in there, and boom, and it's like, okay, let's do it.
I understand that it was Dance Lolita Dance. That was the title of Dance Away.
Yeah, song. Yeah, Dave there again. Yeah, that's again, Ted Templeman was great, but it helped us with smoothing out some of the rough lyrics that we would have and stuff. And he was really good with that. He helped us a lot. We learned more probably those first few albums working with Ted Templeman than anybody else. And the only reason that we actually kind of broke the ties with Ted, recording with him later on when Sammy first joined the band, was because we just wanted to see how a different producer would hear us and work with us, and what his a different producer's input would be. But that early stuff, Ted Templeman was invaluable.
And the harmonies on Dance the Night Away were so great. That's what made that song just punch.
Well, I'd always go, my whole thing all the time was when Dave would come up with lyrics or whatever, I'd just go, Dave, you just go ahead and sing what you sing, and I'm going to sing on top of it. Let's see what we got. And I did that to everything we put down.
Especially in Dance the Night Away, where you guys could do the, Dance the Night Away, and then he could do his Dave thing, and it works so perfectly. I always liked Dance the Night Away because even though it was a little bit more, it was a little bit lighter fare,
right? But
it was definitely showcasing the harmonies and showcasing what Dave did so well. And
it was a great song live because, no doubt when we played it live, it wasn't like, some poppy sounding whatever. We played it like frickin' Van Halen,
Well, Beautiful Girls. And it just shows Dave's clever wordplay. She was seaside sitting, just a smoking and drinking on ringside,
She was a seaside sitting, just a smoking and a drinking on ringside.
And then Eddie's deluxe guitar riffs and your backing vocals on that one. That one's just like the perfect Van Halen song.
Again, that was a riff that Ed had. That was a song that we would play at parties and stuff like that.
We're trying to like a tight deadline is what I read, that you wrote it in DLR's basement and you just finished a tour, and I know that there was a tight deadline is what I read about it.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff, well, because we'd no sooner be finished with a tour and Warner Brothers want us recording a new album. And we'd barely be finishing with an album. They want us out on tour, Come on.
Yeah.
Let's keep that money rolling in, guys. There again, that Ed had a great lick. And Ted, he was great at saying, hey, yeah, maybe go here for a B section, change, not tell us what to play, but say, hey, let's try a different movement here for a B section and whatever. And then just obviously throwing harmonies all over the thing, Ted, we'd sit in the studio, Ted and us, we'd just be singing harmonies to anything and everything. We knew we had great harmonies when we were all doing them. So every song that we wrote in that era, we would try to fit some kind of harmony. That was the one conscious thing we really tried to do. 9 times out of 10, it worked. And then there was in fact, I remember it's just, there'd only be a certain amount of times where someone would say, hey, Dave, you just sing that, and.
Well, it blows my mind that Van Halen II was recorded in just 6 days, but I know that wasn't DLR, he broke his foot in the photo shoot. And
yeah, he's always trying to do some crazy stuff in the photos, in photo shoots and stuff. And so obviously he took that little broken foot and turned it around. And, hey, I'll just get myself a cane and sit in a chair and have a nurse standing behind me, some freaking push-up bra dress, But and the reason that a lot of those songs were done so quick too is because we weren't really at that time still, we weren't into all the studio magic and tricks and everything, and we basically wanted to do most of the stuff without any kind of guitar overdubs, heavy overdubs, because we said we wanted to make sure that we could play live anything that we recorded without having to use any kind of outside anything, you know. And of course, back in the late 70s, you know, nobody was doing a lot of that techno wizardry yet anyway, you know, the Who would have some tapes, and, you know, there'd be bands that do some stuff like that, but we weren't, you know, unless we thought it would embellish it a little bit. We wanted everything to be live. And so Ed, you know, and when you got someone like him that could just freaking do it all live. One thing I'll tell you, when we were writing when songs were written back then, most of the time, Dave would put his lyrics and would work on the melodies to the lyric after the music was pretty much written. So most of the songs were written like instrumentals. So if there's quite a few songs, if you take away the vocals, they hold up on their, it's not like just bar chords or whatever. Eddie would never, I mean, very rarely did I see him just do a straight bar chord. He's always doing some kind of different inflection of a chord, you know, and a lot of those songs hold up on their own as instrumentals.
Absolutely. And I think people are starting to do that more with the technology that we have now. But luckily, you guys never had to work. You never worked with Mutt Lange, because you would have been in the studio for years.
Well, that would come way later on in our career. We won't get into that. Right. But yeah, and we figured there was no, you know, why spend all the money we didn't need to do it? You know, we'd play it.
You could play it, yeah,
and it would sound just like we play it live. So
I mean, you were releasing an album a year for a while there, like,
yeah.
But you know, Beautiful Girls, just put kind of an exclamation point on that one. I love how Beautiful Girls is like that perfect example of DLR being funny and off the wall, and kind of responding to that through his guitar. I've always felt that.
Ooh la la.
Dave always wanted to do stuff where, you know, he would mimic or answer stuff that Ed was doing on his guitar, and of course that comes from a lot of the early Led Zeppelin stuff, because Robert Plant used to do that to Jimmy Page all the time, you know.
Oh, come this way, baby.
Well, going into the 80s with Women and Children First, I mean, killer album cover. Women and Children First was like that album where you're like, whoa, this is a rock band, you know. But Everybody Wants Some. Tell me about that.
Dave had always been noodling down lyrics. He's the perfect lyricist. That guy, half the stuff that he'd come up with would be totally crazy and off the wall. But back then it sounded cool. And I remember Dave saying once, perfect example, the first line goes, I take a look at on a moonbeam. You listen to that? There are no words at all. But he said he just did that because it sounded great coming out of his mouth. And that's the way Dave was. But, you know, we'd tell him, we go, no, that's crap. That's crap. No, that's good. That's good. And every, you know.
DLR's lyrics on that, we wrote a great song. Like you said, when the Moonbeams line, you know.
Yeah, Moonbeam. And on the second line, I think he finishes with Jetstream. And before that, he's saying absolutely nothing. That was actually one of the cool things that Dave would do, because he could pull that kind of stuff off. Would go, yeah, sure, okay, that sounds great, you know. You know, and then Ed, Al, and myself, you know, as Eddie was, you know, we'd just be writing, we'd just be working it up like, you know, rock stuff, and Dave throwing his thing on top of it there.
Along with like Elvis and a few other people, he could get away, and Elvis did it, and it was cheesy, and it worked because it was the king of rock and roll.
I wonder if you're lonesome tonight.
When DLR did it, man, it was like he would say the little comments like, I like the way the line runs up the back of your stocking, you know.
I like the way the line runs up the back of the stocking.
he could do little things like that where it was almost like Cocktail Lounge Sinatra kind of thing, but total hard rock and badass.
Yeah. Well, there's the showman in Dave right there, you know. And it takes somebody like that. I mean, I could never pull anything like that off, you know.
Right.
But you know, because Dave was kind of like the class clown of the band.
Oh yeah.
And that was cool because that stuff it always worked, you know. And the one thing in everybody, you know, when Ted Templeman goes, "Come on, Dave, give me a break," that was totally in the studio and exactly how you hear it. What happened? Because Dave was, can I talk like that? Can I say Dave was fucking around in the vocal booth, and Ted said he hit the talkback button and goes, "Come on, Dave, give me a break." And of course, Dave, you know, he's like, that's how witty he was, you know. Hey, one break coming up, boom. And we listen back to it, and we go, oh, we got to keep that in there, you know.
No, don't take them off. Leave them on.
Well, at the end when he drops the F-bomb, but it fades out, so that most radio stations wouldn't worry about editing it out, you know.
Yeah. Oh, we said, was it? Look, I'll pay you for it.
Yeah, sure, I'll pay you for it. What the?
Yeah.
Look, I'll pay you for it. What the fuck?
And you know, Eddie played the solo with both hands on the freeboard of his guitar. You know, to use the board to support the guitar and free up his hands. You know.
Yeah, that solo. We just wanted to. I remember Eddie. We just said, you know, I'm just gonna bang on one note or two notes. You know, bam, 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 and he just like up and down the neck, and a lot of times, you know, some of the simpler stuff sounds just as good as the real complicated stuff. And that was one thing that Eddie could really do. It's, you know, he had the chops to just, you know, be up and down the neck all day long, but he didn't use his talent like that. You know, he really had a great melodic sense, and he wouldn't tap just for the sake of tapping and see how fast I can do it. He would make something melodic out of it.
Well, and how would you know that years later the claymation hamburger would be singing "Everybody Wants Some"?
Oh my God! I like when they use your song in a crazy way like that.
Yeah, you know? Oh yeah, and "Better Off Dead," man, that was such a classic. It's alive. And the Cradle will rock, though. That is like one of the greatest rock and roll nursery rhymes ever, man. It's kind of a rockabye baby of hard rock, you know.
Yep. And that was Eddie's first kind of getting into doing keyboard. I don't think anybody really knew that was keyboards when that first came out. They thought he was doing it on guitar. Ed he went to the store and bought a Wurlitzer little electric piano, very, very basic. You know, hey, let's see what this sounds like blowing through my Marshall stack. And we're like, oh my God, he came up with this thing. We're like, holy crap.
There's so many urban legends about that. I mean, what is that really? Because a lot of people say it's Eddie scraping the rear springs that attach the Floyd Rose to the body of the guitar while moving the trem bar. But
on which part? On the
beginning, the
very beginning.
Yeah.
All that is because I played it live on stage when we did that. He had a pedal effect, and he was just banging his hand on the keyboard, not even really playing any kind of note. So it was just an effect, and he just banged it,
yeah,
and then turned it off. You know. Same thing like in Unchained. Same thing. It was the same type of thing, but he did it on guitar.
Nothing stays the same. Unchained.
But he did the same thing on the Wurlitzer in that song.
I think Fair Warning and Diver Down are so underrated when it comes to the catalog because it has some of my favorites.
Fair Warning is probably my favorite Roth era album because it was very kind of straight ahead, a lot of good rock songs on it.
Because like Mean Street, tell me about that, because that's such an incredible track.
Yeah, and that's, Eddie would do his tapping, and he just did this rhythmic thing on the guitar, because he was always around tapping, doing different stuff. And we'd be at rehearsal, and all of a sudden someone would go, "Hey, wow, that sounds cool what you're doing." Hey, play a little bit more of that. And then we end up sticking it in a song, whether it's an intro or whatever.
Did Fair Warning, the album title, really come from those lyrics where, it says, somebody said, fair warning, Lord, strike that poor boy down.
Oh,
I love David Lee Roth's lyrics on that song. He's just so good.
Yeah,
Wait a minute now. Somebody said fair warning.
Yeah, that was just off the wall, and then take a look at the album cover. Alex used to come with a couple of those album cover ideas, and the Fair Warning, that album cover just looks just kind of off the wall,
That one, oh yeah, that one was crazy, man. I remember it kind of scared the hell out of me as a kid.
Yeah,
Look,
someone's getting punched in the face somewhere.
Well, Unchained.
Unchained was another, I think, AC/DC type of thing. It always sounded great when Ed would play a lick, and sometimes it's the first thing I would do. I would just pound on the note, I dropped tune down to D, and we hadn't really done anything like that before. And of course, now bands they're tuned way down, but it was just he came up with this lick, and I played it, and then hey, tune it down to a low D, and it just had the balls that So that was like kind of one of the early songs where we, tuned down. Ed would do that all the time. He'd be playing something to take his E string and tune it down to a D, and and play like that. And not a lot of people were doing stuff like that yet. And it was just such a heavy sound that we came up with that lick, and we just started jamming on that one lick. Kind of evolved, kind of blossomed. The song blossomed from there, but it was just that one basic
Ah, love that. We even have more, including the stories behind the album 1984, which will be dropping soon. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Michael Anthony and Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, and man, perfect albums, truly. Let's talk about the memories behind these songs, and let's celebrate the mighty Van Halen below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.